After watching the Zeitgeist movie on religion, I felt it necessary to make this film because people out there are actually believing it. And it's pretty obvious when you watch it, at least when you watch this first part, that it's full of lies. A lot of misinformation, and a lot of obvious misinformation too. But we'll get into that as we discuss the video. Now this video tries to make Christianity seem like a version of sun worship. In fact, it uses false logic to do so, and also makes it seem like borrowed beliefs. And this really isn't the case. Its first mistake is that it makes a statement saying that ancient people worshiped the sun and that they called the sun God's son and referred to it as the savior of the world. Now, this makes it seem like, oh, this sounds similar to Christianity. Anyone who hears this is going to think so. Even though it's not making the claim yet, it is making a point to sort of put the idea into your head. Now, this actually is a play on English words, which is actually why it's a mistake, because ancient people who worshiped the sun didn't speak English, and their words for a male child, as in son, or the sun in the sky, are completely different words. In fact, they're not at all similar, and they're also completely different concepts. But the video tries to establish a link here early on, and the link is just not there. The next mistake this video will make is it talks about Horus the sun god. Now this is from Egyptian mythology. Anyone familiar with Egyptian mythology recognizes the mistake right away, but I'll continue. Now, it gives all these circumstances around his birth, his life, his death, and supposed resurrection that when you read it, again, you're thinking, sounds similar to Jesus. Now, that's where the mistake lies, because actually the truth is that these aren't the case. It's actually Ra who was the Egyptian god of the sun. Now, here I have listed for you the different circumstances around his birth and his life. Now, there's more than this out there, but as you can see, he wasn't baptized, there was no ministry, there was no virgin birth, he wasn't crucified. Now, Egyptian mythology you can easily look up and find several sources, and you can see that what the Zeitgeist video actually tries to put forth as fact just isn't true. The third mistake that this video will make is that it references several other deities, and it claims the exact same thing that it did with Horus, that it has all these similarities, these same occurrences around their birth, their life, their death, and resurrection 3 days later, when if you actually examine the mythologies behind each one and the stories behind each one, you will find that this isn't the case. This is a flat-out lie. Now, whether they intended to lie or just misinformation, I'm not going to make a claim. But this is false information that the video puts out. Now, I encourage you, and same with Egyptian mythology, look this up for yourself. And find credible sources, not just someone spouting on the internet on some webpage saying, oh, this is what actually is. Find people who've actually done the research and who've studied this stuff and actually know the stories behind it. Now, even though we've actually proven all the other claims false, it actually builds on these to try to develop an explanation to why all the similarities. Now, in doing so, it actually repeats the first flaw. Now, if you watch the video, it'll claim that the 3 stars that make up the belt in the constellation Orion are referred to as the 3 kings. And those 3 stars form a line that points to a bright star called Sirius, and it'll say on December 25th, they actually point towards the east, towards the sun. And if you take an astronomical star chart and you actually line up December 25th and find Orion, you find that at 6 p.m. is when it points towards the east. Now at this point, the sun's actually either setting in the west or has just set in the west. So really, they're not pointing to the sun. Now by 7 in the morning, when the sun's starting to come up, they are no longer pointing in that direction. So this is something that you really have to consider when you are actually making these conclusions and making these claims. Now, it also uses the whole son and son, as in male child, as that whole play on words again, thinking, oh, they're similar in the English language, so other languages must have it similar too. Again, this is incorrect. Like I stated before, in these different languages, they were different words and different concepts. You don't have the same occurrence where in English they are the same sounding and different concepts, so they could easily be transfigured. That's not going to happen in these ancient languages. Another thing this video will try to do is to claim that the constellation Virgo is actually the Virgin Mary, because Virgo is a virgin. Well, there's actually no real link, although it tries to draw one, saying that Bethlehem is more of a reference to Virgo than a real place. Here's the problem. It's a real place. It's a historical place. Now, it tries to make you think that there's no historical reference, but there is. In fact, the story of Christ's birth also includes historical figures like Herod. They've actually found Herod the Great's body. Now, it will also try to explain the crucifixion away by saying that the position of this and movement of the sun in relation to a constellation we know today as the Southern Cross, or crux, is explaining the crucifixion, and there really is no explanation there. In fact, back in ancient Greece, they recognized it as part of the Centaurus constellation, or Centaur constellation. Now, the idea of it being a cross, or crux, was not until much, much later. In fact, well after the time of Jesus. Well, I thank you for watching my video, and I have included a link for you to actually view this first part of the Zeitgeist video, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, and you can get a feel for these inaccuracies. Now, I do encourage you to actually look up this information for yourself, do research, find credible sources, and realize that these facts that the Zeitgeist video presents are not actually facts. They are false stories, simplified false stories, but false stories. You need to go out there and find the truth.